You are now live.
Okay, so Ms. Rotkin, can you hit the got it button up there? Clear the screen. Okay, so this is Senate Finance. This is Monday, May 9th. And we're looking at H559. This is an act relating to workers' compensation. Damian, tell us what's in this bill.
Sure. Good afternoon. For the record, Damian Leonard, Legislative Counsel. So this is the annual Workers' Compensation Administrative Fund surcharge bill. So the big change for this year is halfway through the paragraph, you'll see that the contribution rate for direct calendar year premiums for workers' compensation has increased from 1.4% to 1.5%. Otherwise, everything is identical to the last several years. My understanding from talking to the department is that the reason for the change in the rate is twofold. They have some ongoing modernization projects, and that is combined with a decrease in the amount of workers' compensation premiums being written in the state, which I believe is related to a decrease in the rate of workers' compensation losses in the state. So on the overall, it's a good thing, but it does mean that the surcharge rate needed to go up by 0.1% this year.
Workers' comp has been going down, and this is the percentage that the department, the agency, takes out of the fund to run to run the fund to administer the program as well.
Right. This is essentially a rate of contribution that's charged as a surcharge on your workers' comp premiums. So, and then it's paid by the insurers to the department. It goes into the administration fund, and it pays for the department's administration of the workers' comp program in the state.
Okay, this is a surcharge.
Yep.
Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Damian, I remember from a conversation about workers' comp that there are various pools based on risk levels, et cetera. Is this rate applied to all the pools, the same rate, regardless of where they are?
So if you look at the language of the bill here, you'll see that there are three different rates really. So the first is for direct written premiums for workers' compensation insurance. So these are for employers who are purchasing a workers' compensation policy from a third-party insurer. It is regardless of whether you're in the assigned risk pool or whether you're able to obtain workers' comp without going into the assigned risk pool. The second is for self-insured workers' comp losses. These are the state's largest employers, like the state of Vermont is self-insured. And the third is workers' comp losses of corporations approved under 21 VSA Chapter 9. And those are essentially cooperative corporations, which are approved by the Commissioner of Financial Regulation, where a number of employers get together and form essentially a cooperative insurance pool, and they self-insure through that pool. So the 1% rate is for self-insured, and the 1.5% rate is for anyone else who's buying directly from a third-party insurance company.
And what is it in the current year?
1.4%. For the direct calendar premiums, and it's staying at 1%. So it's been 1% for self-insured for I think as long as I've been with the legislature. So this would be 8 straight years now at least.
So is it that you said that the self-insured are the biggest employers, like the state or UVM or whatever?
Yeah, they're employers who have the financial resources to self-insure.
Right, and then it also says compensation losses of corporations. So is this rate only for the 1.5% rate only for the smallest employers then?
No, so it's for the majority of employers in the state pay the 1.5% rate. But the largest employers in the state, as I understand it, a number of them are able to or choose to self-insure. So for those that do self-insure, they pay the 1% rate. And it's the difference for self-insured is it's on losses rather than premiums. So you're looking at a slightly different calculation, because if you self-insure, you don't pay premiums. So they look at your calendar year losses there for those groups who are self-insuring versus for everyone else where they're paying premiums. So it could be that a large corporation chooses to have we'll call them Acme Insurance, provide them with their workers' comp insurance because it's easier to run it through a third-party insurer. They would pay the 1.5% on their premiums. If instead they chose to self-insure and set up the sureties to ensure that they could pay their losses, they would pay a 1% on their losses, whatever those might be. So if you have a particularly bad year, you would pay a larger surcharge. If you have very low losses for the year, you would pay a lesser rate. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm just trying to figure out why there's a different rate between the two of them. Is it because the self-insured take less to administer for the state and therefore they should have a lower rate?
So it's because the difference in as I understand it, it's because of the difference between what you might see in premiums, which is insuring against potential future losses and insuring versus actual losses. And typically, I think self-insured have a lower rate of losses than third-party insured companies do, because there's, it's their own funds that they're trying to manage as judiciously as possible. I'm looking to see here if I can find the Department of Labor's explanations from when they were in front of the House. They had a little bit more detail, but the rate has always been slightly, as I understand it, always been slightly higher on direct calendar year premiums versus self-insured losses because of just the different nature of the two pools of funds that you're measuring. So let me see if I can find their explanation.
We have Department of Labor in here.
Okay.
Dirk Anderson's the current director of workers' comp over there. So
you were, okay. Can you come on up and explain it to us? I don't recognize people wearing masks anymore. And you're not.
is Dirk there?
Just yeah.
Oh, Dirk, thank goodness you're here to help me out.
Well, I
Appreciate
don't
it.
know that I can, Damien. First of all, thank you, Madam Chair, Dirk Anderson. I'm the Director of Workers' Compensation and Safety for the Department of Labor, succeeding Steve Monahan, who retired last December.
Okay, see, we're really out of it. Steve Monahan has been Mr. Workers' Comp since I've been in this building.
He has been Mr. Workers' Comp for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
And his knowledge is sorely missed. Nowhere more than right here, where I am unable to articulate the reason why the self-insured are charged at a different rate. Historically, that has been a distinction recognized by the statutes for quite a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but I do think that if you look back, and I do happen to have a history of the annual rate. Going back. Wait, it was right in my.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry.
There it is.
Okay.
Okay, so the rate, the annual rate that fluctuates, not the 1%, but the rate on written premiums, going back 20 years, has fluctuated from as low as 0.4% on written premium in 2007 to as high as 1.75% in 2011, 2013, 2011 through 2013. So what happens every year is the department works with DFR to get an estimate of the amount of premium that will be written in the state. And then it's just simple math. We look at the anticipated budget for the workers' compensation division, the amount of premium that we can expect to assess, and figure out what number we need to make those numbers match.
Okay.
And this year, that is 1.5%. Getting back to Senator Hardy's question, like, why is the 1%? 1%, that is a question I really can't answer without doing further research. I can say that historically that rate has not adjusted. I don't believe there's anything that would keep you from adjusting it. I do think that because of the very limited number of employers who are self-insured, that number is currently, I think it's greater than 10, but fewer than 20. Because you've got such a small pool of employers, there's probably a greater opportunity for fluctuation, depending on who has a good year, who has a bad year. But again, that's speculation on my part. I haven't really researched it.
There is a reason why we're not doing it. It's called the last 3 days of the session. And there's no way we're rewriting the workers' comp statute. But, so this is your annual, and I'm surprised to see it hanging out here on its own. If we had voted out miscellaneous tax on Friday, I think I'd put this on it. Because we do it every year. You're going up 0.1% because the workers' comp premiums have gone down, which is a good thing. And you're doing some modernization and you need some money to do that, which is what this fee is set up to do. So committee, any questions? Okay. I knew Senator Sorokin would.
I'll move the bill favorably.
Well, I want to hear from Dan Dickerson to
Oh,
see
sorry.
what the fiscal impact is, and then you can do that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Dan, what's the fiscal impact?
Dan Dickerson, Joint Fiscal. There should be a fiscal note available on your webpage, basically increasing the rate from 1.4 to 1.5 raises about 165,000 estimated in fiscal year 2023, or an additional 165 over what the rate currently brings in. So I think at 1.4%, it would be about 2.3 or 2.4 million total just from that rate. So it'd just be raising the rate is another 165,000 on top of that. And that will help the workers' comp program meet its operating budget and do, I think, a series of IT system upgrades that they're using an ongoing balance in that fund for.
So just the way we talk about this is slightly confusing to me. So we've talked about the program meeting its costs, but the bulk of those costs are beneficiary costs, right? Not like the admin costs of keeping the program going.
I believe these are primarily admin costs, but I would defer to the director who's there to clarify on that.
These are the administrative costs of administering the program. The department doesn't pay any benefits out, unlike unemployment insurance, where the trust fund maintained by the state. Workers' compensation is strictly an insurance policy that one buys from a private carrier. So the state doesn't pay anything out. This is all salary and just the cost of
Benefits,
maintaining
office space.
records. Yes.
So how many people are we talking here?
Currently talking about, I think 12, 13, maybe 14 FTEs. And records management, again, we're in the beginning stages of upgrading to a modern IT system. If you come to the department, you will see a large room full of boxes with paper files containing medical records and administrative paperwork. We're moving that all onto an electronic platform. So that's the big lift right
It should
now.
make things more efficient.
But this says that's not coming out. Is that part of why we need the increase? Because it says here you have a surplus that will go towards the tech.
We do have a surplus currently obligated. Over the next, we expect this to take about 4 years to implement fully. We currently have 2 contracts totaling, I think, $2.5 million. So there is a cushion there in the cash on hand, but again, it's the beginning of an IT project. So I would like to have enough money there in case things go over budget as they invariably do.
Committee, Senator Hardy.
I hear you, Madam Chair, it's the end of the year, but it doesn't, it's still confusing me because it says at the end of FY '21, there was a balance of $8.6 million. And it says that the IT project cost is estimated to be $4.4 million.
I know
This is in the fiscal note. So it just seems like you already have that cushion.
I believe, I don't think we have $8 million left now. I think that cash balance, that number I have from the last calendar quarters, just about $7 million.
Well, do you disagree with the fiscal note?
I don't.
Dan, the fiscal note, is this? You're saying that at the end of the year, they had $8 million in the bank?
They did. That was the balance in the workers' comp fund. And their annual operating budget, I think,
The
is
workers' comp fund or in their administrative budget?
that was in the workers' comp fund.
In the fund, that's the fund that we pay benefits out of? No?
No,
No. This is in the budget.
Says the administration fund.
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to double check that one. But your expenses are less than half of what they were in 2020. In 20, you went down over $1 million in expenses. So
Do you have a copy of the fiscal note?
I do not.
Would you like a copy? I can print it for
can
you.
you print that?
Thank you, that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
this is what we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know you were taking this up until an hour ago, frankly.
Neither did we.
Well, while we wait for that, could I just ask JFO?
Yeah.
Question. Jan, I mean, I
Can you grab that?
want your opinion here, but I know it's not your place to offer just your straight up opinion, but based on the facts that we have an operating budget of X, we have a surplus in the balance, and we have a $4.4 million estimate of tech upgrades. Do we need to increase the premium
It's on the
to
back.
to
No,
stay,
it goes to the commissioner and it's on the back.
to stay solvent here?
The table's on the back.
You're raising an interesting question because, one, I think when I wrote this fiscal note, and I also didn't know I was coming in until about an hour or so ago. I got the most recent information from Mr. Anderson at the time, which was that the IT project would cost about 4.4. With inflation, I mean, that could potentially go up a lot, but is it going to eat up the entirety of that balance? Probably not. So I'll leave it at that. I can't really give an opinion on, whether you should enact legislation or not. Or,
Okay,
I mean, I can just give you what I know.
okay, maybe what would be most helpful, since you are new and this is the first time you've done this, it looks like you carry a between $6 and $7 million balance every year. And I'm surprised they don't take it away from you. Do you know why that is? And I'd be happy to give you time to go back and talk to your fiscal people and give us a chance, just tell us why you carry that much of a balance.
Well, Madam Chair, historically, I don't know how long we've had that much of a balance. I do know that back in 2013 and 2014, some money came in the form of a special, what's called a technological assessment. Again, I wasn't running the program at the time, but I think those were monies we asked for in anticipation of the modernization project. So I would imagine that surplus that we have now is larger than historically it has been. If we do not get the increase, is that going to put us in the red? I don't think so. I think the logic behind the increase was if we have figures from DFR just showing a steady decline in premium over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And that has been fairly significant. So the revenue brought in by the 1.4% is going to be less than the operating cost of administering the program on an annual basis. But yes, there is a large cash surplus there.
Okay. Senator Pearson.
Damian, if we don't pass this bill, is the law just stay with the status quo?
The law says that we have to authorize the rate each year. Let me pull up the statute for you. So it just might be worth pointing out, if you look at the fiscal note there too, the lower administrative costs were during COVID. And I can't speak for the department, but I think it might be worth asking whether any of those costs were covered by federal funds, with staff being shifted around to, for example, the unemployment insurance program. And again, I can't speak for the department, but that might be an explanation for why the expenses were cut 50% in the first year of COVID. But going back to the statute there, if you go to 21 VSA, let me just pull up the statute. down here to section 711, it says B, annually, the General Assembly shall establish the rate of contribution for the direct calendar year premium for workers' compensation insurance. The rate shall equal the amount approved in the appropriations process for the program and the department's projection of salary and benefit increases for the fiscal year, less the amount collected in the prior calendar year under subsection A of this section from self-insured workers' compensation losses and from corporations approved under this chapter, adjusted by any balance in the fund from prior fiscal year divided by the total direct calendar year premium for workers' compensation insurance for the prior year. So I think essentially what we've got here is a rate that is designed to meet the costs of the department's projection for the amount approved for the administration of the program, including the department's projection of salary and benefit increases, less the amount of the self-insured workers' comp loss collections from the prior year. That additional amount in there from the technological assessment that Dirk mentioned, I think is being carried for the technology project, whereas the rest of this is set up to basically match up to the administrative costs so that year to year, you're roughly matching the administrative costs with the rate that's set. I'm not a numbers guy, so I can't tell you what those costs will be, but that's the way we're supposed to calculate the rate every year under the statute. I know Senator Sirotkin has been a proponent of doing away with this annual assessment, but your colleagues in the House have opposed that every time it's been proposed. But that's the annual assessment method, and we're required to do that each year. In the event that we didn't do it, I think there would be a question as to whether it was legal for the surcharge to be assessed. Although there is a 1.4% surcharge on the books under subsection A, it does say that each year we are supposed to set the assessment rate for the coming calendar year. And so I think there would certainly be an argument from ratepayers that they didn't have to pay the assessment if we didn't actually authorize it.
Okay, at this point, I don't think we've got enough information and I don't want to do any harm. So I'm going to let you go back and maybe get with Dan and see if you can tell us why you carried that bottom line. And, just give us a little better breakout so we understand why we need to increase it. And we'll get you back on sometime this week. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
All right, next, we are going forward with 161. And Greg Faber is here. And Ellen is here. And I believe on Friday, the question was, what is the measure that the department will use in recommending whether or not this project should be continued, or when they have to do an assessment before there's a new rate hearing. And Greg, I think I got that correctly, Senator. Is that what the question was?
Yes, yes, we did. Questions and
So
that was
Greg,
basically what,
all right. So,
what was the, how do you measure efficiency? What do you measure?
well, I think it was, So Greg, can you tell us how you would go about assessing the efficiency of this plant? Or is it something else that you would be assessing when you?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Greg Faber with the Public Utility Commission. So we're talking about the bill as passed by the House. We're not talking about Senator McDonald's amendment.
No, right now we're talking about the bill as passed by the House.
Okay. So the way that would work is that the department, not the PUC, would investigate. They would get annual reports from the plant about this waste heat facility. And if the efficiency of the combined waste heat facility with the plant dropped below a certain level, then the plant would have to come up with a plan to get back to the required level. If they don't do that, then the department can request that the PUC open an investigation into terminating the rate that they would have gotten in the rate case that would have happened before then, presumably.
And we're interested in before the rate case. This is all based on Rygate has to become a more efficient plant. This has always, in my experience, been talked about in using their heat or their fuel, their plant itself. It's always been talked about as finding a use for the heat that it generates that now doesn't do anything constructive. How do you determine if it's 70% efficient or 50% efficient?
The department can do that. We do efficiency levels for a lot of projects. Efficiency Vermont does that as well. They would just use metrics to figure out how efficient the plant was. I don't think it's a huge lift on their part. And then they would have to rely on a lot of information from the plant, of course. So they would use that information to come up with an analysis of the efficiency.
Okay, I guess what kind of information are we talking about? Are we talking about how many BTUs get put out? How much waste heat gets released into the atmosphere? Do you know what they're measuring or how they're measuring it?
I'm no expert in thermal heat efficiency, but essentially what they're measuring is whether the use of the waste heat from the plant creates efficiencies for both units, for the waste heat facility as well as the plant. So it would, in general, it would make the plant more efficient because their waste heat that they would normally just send into the atmosphere, that would be utilized by this waste heat facility, some sort of biochar facility.
Or to dry something, but it would be used and not just wasted.
Right. That's essentially what's going on here. They would be using the plant would become more efficient because the formerly waste heat would now be usable heat.
Okay. Committee, any questions at this point? Senator McDonald.
So the interest of my questions is if efficiency is defined as getting more power with the same amount of fuel, thereby making the price low. So I don't.
So
Oops, I
I'm
appreciate
bothering you.
Favors.
They're just blocking you
Oh,
from the camera.
That's fine. I don't mind if they
Oh, I
block
see.
me from the camera. I
Sorry,
hate
I'm sorry.
cameras.
Sorry, I guess I
Okay,
ask
so,
committee members, but
all right,
we would hope to get better from the plant
All
than
right.
what we're getting now.
well, right now, don't use the word "we" unless we have decided it. Okay, the first question I heard you ask was, are they able to produce more electricity for the same amount of fuel and therefore be getting a lower rate? And I think the answer to that is no. They aren't producing more electricity, they're just not wasting the heat. Is that,
Right.
okay? So it's using the heat, which is generated by the electric production process, to do something constructive. And we've got 2 wood generating plants right now, and neither one of them has been able to do this. But that's what we're talking about here when we talk about efficiency. Right, it's not revving up the boilers and making more electricity with the same fuel. It's using the byproduct of that process in an efficient, for something constructive. And I suppose you could argue that if you're using that byproduct, you don't have to put in another furnace to heat the other building, or you don't have to use other fuel to do that, but, okay. So, committee,
So,
So-
Madam Chair,
yes, you have another question?
so this doesn't appear to lower the subsidy that's being offered.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Not now.
But the House's language asks if you have a contract to co-locate, that the PUC would then start anew, refresh the order to examine the new economics and set a commensurate rate. So it could then, if they're making tons of bank on the waste heat, which is no longer wasted, that the direction of the House language is that the PUC has to take that into account as they set a new rate for the next 10 years.
And that will happen we've given them till 2024. This, as the bills that come to us, moves it to 2025. If, and there's all, they have to have a contract, they have to be under construction. And I'm looking, here's Ellen, no, that's just the McDonald amendment. Okay, any other questions at this point?
So when they go ahead and do this, they'll do it by rule or by order or by.
PUC, the language I think talks about an order, but.
Yeah,
Typically, we do these by contested case proceeding, so an order would issue after that contested case proceeding.
okay,
We can see it, it's on Fridays.
yeah, that's where I'm looking.
The House proposal?
Yeah,
Okay, I missed the walkthrough of this, so.
it's pretty close to the bill as introduced, where it sets up these, if you do it by here, then we let you have another year, and then you go,
Right, okay. Fun. Is there a definition anywhere of, or a formula that's used for the PUC rate
Ellen.
setting? Ellen, do you mind if I ask her?
Yeah, I think the PUC has criteria for rate setting. I don't think it's in this bill.
Yes, 30 VSA 8009D lists the factors that the PUC will use in its avoided cost calculation. The bill as proposed by the House did include a couple of additional factors. But yes, there is it's not an exact formula, but it's the list of factors that the PUC will consider that is in the statute.
Okay, and are they're all defined already in statute?
Yes.
is efficiency defined in statute or is that
No. There is a defined term in Title 30 for energy conversion efficiency, although it's qualitative, not really quantitative. But no, there isn't a specific defined definition here for efficiency.
is that, Mr. Faber, is there a definition that you all use for that? Or is there an industry standard or something that you look to define efficiency?
I think it would be more of a standard. There's no specific definition that I know of, but these kinds of things are measured by the department and by Efficiency Vermont. We do this stuff all the time. So I think there would be an I would describe it as more of an agreed upon standard.
So like they would agree that the plant has become more efficient or less efficient, and they would know what that means.
The department would make that determination in the House version, and then they would report to us.
But if they are using the heat, which now we're releasing into the atmosphere, it's just going up the smokestack. If they find a way to use that heat in an adjoining facility, that would say that they were more efficient than they were, and then it would be up to determine how much more efficient they were. Is that basically how that would work?
Yeah, that's exactly how it would work. They'd have to become 50% more efficient than they are now.
And so you would have to do a determination as to how much heat was going up the chimney, and then how much heat was going into the new building, and determine if that was half the heat or more or less that was going up the chimney. That
Correct. Yep.
Senator Pearson.
Maybe Mr. Faber could tell us, I think, as you've heard, the term efficiency has tripped us up, because after they gain 50% relative efficiency, they're not actually going to be producing 50% more power or producing the current power at half the price.
No.
But I would assume that that efficiency could show up in dollars generated, and then we might expect that the rate would come down that utilities are forced to pay, right? I mean, it is apples to mustard here, and trying to get them together is tricky. But even with our own clunky thinking, do you think that this outline, I mean, if this landed in your lap, could you, with help from the department, fiddle your way through it?
Well, it will end in my lap. I mean, not me personally, but it will end in the PUC's lap. But yes, I think we can implement this now. And you're right. The way the House discussed this, if there was some sort of revenue gained from the waste heat facility that accrued to the plant, those revenues would be accounted for in any rate proceeding that we would do. So that could potentially lower, because they'd have more revenue coming in, that would lower their costs and therefore lower the rate they received for that time period.
And I think that's what was anticipated.
Yes, that's what, yeah.
Senator Bray has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Faber, so it makes sense to me. I mean, I agree with Senator Pearson. The word efficiency has been a little big and fuzzy, and it's tripped people up. What do we mean by it and all the rest? But in terms of the sort of ancillary income coming in from the waste heat, two questions. One, have you ever had to deal with like a second income stream as you evaluated the pricing and set a tariff for a station before? And then secondly, what if it, what portion of any kind of secondary income stream would you ever want to sort of attach in the proceeding? If it was fabulously successful, might you drive the rate all the way down to sub-market rates? Or if it was paltry, would it have no impact at all? So can you talk a little bit about how it seems like, I like apples to mustard. I've never heard that one before. It seems like an odd way of doing the math. Makes sense on sort of a street level, but I've never heard about it happening in a proceeding before.
Right. So here we're talking about thermal efficiency rather than electric efficiency.
Right.
That's the first thing you have to get your mind around. And then have we ever seen something like this before? I've certainly never seen it in my time at the commission. So as far as I know, we haven't seen something like this before. And as far as the revenues that would accrue to the plant owner, that would all be fleshed out in the contested case proceeding. That's why we would have that. People would say, yeah, we're making this much. Other people would say, no, it's got to be discounted by that. Those are all kinds of things that come up in a contested case proceeding. So we'd have to wait and see what happens with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, committee, any other questions? If not, Senator McDonald, do you have an amendment?
Madam Chair, I am heartened by what I have heard, that if there is savings to be made with excess heat, that the department, the PUC would seek to apply those savings to reduce the subsidy by ratepayers. They would have to come up with a formula, and of course, it assumes that all other things remain equal. Ukraine hasn't driven up prices here or there, left, right, and sideways. My amendment asks that the formulas used to determine efficiency are known before the authority is granted to exercise it. And that's what, if the committee believes that's important, they will offer an amendment. If they believe it's not, we will trust in what we have just heard. So,
Senator, I think you have to offer an amendment before the committee can discuss it.
so I have an amendment, and if you want to take a straw poll, the committee was interested in it.
Well, why don't we have Ellen walk us through the amendment, because right now we don't know what it is.
Oh, well, fine.
Okay, Ellen, can you walk us through this?
Sure. It's posted under my name today.
Yeah, we actually have a hard copy. I think all of us do. Some of us do.
If anyone doesn't have a hard copy, I have a hard copy here.
Okay, so what this amendment does is it strike all to the House's proposal, and it returns to the version that you passed, which is the 1-year extension. And then there's new language, which is on page 2. It's a new section 4 that is a session law provision asking the PUC to report back on a formula used. So I'll read it unless you want me to put it up on the screen, but it's pretty
So
short.
this,
Section 4 is the hard copy.
yes, I'm getting that. But I've got another question. The other issue, and I don't think we did it, was extending that if they do everything, that they have the extension till 2032. Is that still in this bill? Okay, and that's what, as I remember, the Rygate folks said they had to have before they could get anyone No one's going to make a commitment and sign a contract and start construction if once that construction's completed, there's no guarantee that, once they've fulfilled all their contract, there's no guarantee that this plant is going to be kept alive for a number of years. And that isn't in here, right? So that's a major change from the House. Committee.
I'm sure I have no problem extending it for 10 years. Way out for 10 years, if we knew what the measurement device was. Again,
Well,
I think that's it.
you just had testimony as to what the measurement device is. I think I can say it's not a Geiger counter that they're gonna take down there and get a reading. It's not a machine. It's not a set mathematical formula. So I'm just, what would it take to make this go forward?
That they improve the efficiency and get a credit for doing it, but that we don't simply guarantee and we just guarantee what hasn't been spelled out to us. And I think that's a reasonable position, and I'm trying to help the committee find a way to get to that place.
Senator,
I actually think that's what the House language does. It's if they fail to have a partner to use that heat in what a timeline, Ellen, a year and a half from now?
November.
24, October 24, I should pull it up, but if they fail to do that, it's over, they get one more year, wind down the clock. If they do that, then they have to demonstrate they're moving forward and sort that out, and then they get the opportunity to prove their case with efficiency with an ongoing kind of check-in. So there's no automatic 10-year. I've become convinced that with the massaging, this is, the House's version is pretty close to the original as introduced, but some little, it's tightened. And I think, I don't know, I think they might have done a decent job.
Don't say that too loud, we don't want to go in their heads. Senator Gray.
This has been a long and torturous discussion, extended over months. I mean, I think at this point, I would agree with where Senator Pearson's coming down, that there have been adjustments. I think we found a pretty straightforward way to address the issues that are outstanding. Mr. Faber's, representation that although this is unique, they're well equipped in their process to analyze it and bring it into a rate case, which from everything I've ever heard about them are very rigorous. There's no free passes for anyone in a rate case. So I'm content to support the current House version and concur.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I wish only that we could have harnessed some of the heat, arriving at the point we are now. And if we're satisfied with the testimony of Mr. Faber, I'm prepared to accept.
Okay. Committee. Is somebody ready to make a motion?
I'll move it. Let's be done with this bill. I can
We
move that
concur.
we concur with the House.
Okay, Senator Hardy has moved. Do you have your voting sheet?
I do.
Okay.
We can't squeeze another
No, we are not squeezing.
Hour?
This is
degree of.
I have 1 hour to prep the miscellaneous tax bill, and I have another
One more bill.
one more bill. So we have a motion to approve H.
Concur with us.
That's 161.
That's 161 as returned to us by the House. Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed say no. Believe that is 700. So thank you, committee.
A few minutes.
All right, we are ready to go. We're going on to miscellaneous provisions affecting health insurance. And
Did you do that first?
I did.
No.
Send a high.
Thank you.
I can't send that.
did we get on her way?
Jen is on her way.
You're just as sick of it as we are.
Okay. We're waiting for Jen.
That was painful.
Well, you know, it was painful, but it's, Sarah Jones is right, it's clunky language. And Greg actually, for the first time, have sort of tied what, you know, the common understanding, but we sort of have to think in sort of loophole understanding.
Well, we're thinking of, we're thinking in terms of electricity,
Yeah.
and this is thermal. And we probably, if somebody told us at 5 o'clock on Friday, we would have been.
Is Senator Hardy obliged to use the term?
Oh, yeah, who's gonna,
That's not apples and
No,
oranges.
I'm not reporting.
It is a McDonald bill.
Yeah, you had to report it the first time,
Razor.
or Bray reported it the first time,
Good.
right? Chris, you reported it to begin with.
Yeah, I like this bill.
okay.
Oh, you like it, you're definitely reporting it.
All right. And so we need to take that upstairs as soon as we're finished, and
We'll take it up on Senator Bray's.
and Senator Bray, you need to send the Senate office an email and tell them you are in fact the reporter of.
I think it's up for
It's up.
action, so I think we could just tell them we're ready,
It's up, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
because we're not doing it.
and that's right, all we have to do is say concur.
Is
We'll make
this,
this easy for the Senate.
All right,
this next bill?
so Jen,
Yes.
489.
are you there? There you
Yes.
are. What did they do to the miscellaneous provisions affecting health insurance?
Is this on our page? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't see it.
Let's see, this I think just showed up, because I
It's in the
didn't know about it this morning.
Senator McDonald, quick question. That was 700, yes?
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so Jen, what did they do?
So they, Jennifer Carby, Legislative Counsel, they added a report. So they didn't change anything that, from what you sent over. They just added a new section that directs DFR in consultation with the Green Mountain Care Board to convene a working group to identify options for, consider the advantages and disadvantages of, and develop recommendations regarding maintaining separate individual and small group health insurance markets in plan years in a manner that reduces premiums in the small market without increasing costs in the individual markets. Basically, they sent them to go off and convene a working group to talk about how to do separate markets going forward that helps the small group and doesn't hurt the individual group. And those report findings and recommendations are due to various committees, including this committee, by January 15th, 2023.
Okay. Given that this
The
was as
House-
painful as,
The House had asked us for feedback ahead of time.
Yeah.
We said, please put it in DFR, not Green Mountain Care Board.
that's right, I was trying to remember,
Yeah.
what did we tell them was DFR and not Green Mountain?
This one.
Okay, and they did that, right? Is the DFR?
They did that. Yep, it's DFR in consultation with the Green Mountain Care Board. The DFR leads it.
Okay,
So it would be rather awkward were we not to,
were we not to approve this?
but of course.
Is that a
things
motion?
change. Yeah, I'd be glad to move to concur, that we recommend the Senate concur with the House proposal.
Okay. What is this?
H
H
489.
489.
Was I the reporter?
No, I was.
Oh. But I could be, Chair, if you were swamped.
This, no, I can stand.
Okay.
Once I get through the yield and miscellaneous tax,
Piece of cake.
it's a piece of cake.
That's what I need this morning.
Oh, okay. We have a motion to concur. I have 4 members. No, 5. There we go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. That carries 502. Thank you, everyone. That is it for today.
We're just getting started.
Watch your
We're creating the heat.
emails. Watch your emails. Jen, did you get my note back on the PDF?
I did. I responded first with a question and then just with a new version. So check your email, or I can come down if you want.
Okay, no, I haven't had a minute to look at emails. I will get to it event. And you just forgot that section 11?
And